I can see everybody trying to stay as close to the tree in the shade as possible. Well, thanks very much for being here this afternoon. And what we'd like to do is talk about the Self-Drive Act, which is my piece of legislation that passed out of our committee on Energy and Commerce unanimously last year. And not only that, it was voice voted out of the House then, and had great bipartisan support. We had over 300 different meetings in committee and subcommittee on the bill. And it was a very good piece of legislation that we sent over to the Senate. And what we do know is this: time's running out because we're getting toward the end of this legislative year, and the calendar is getting short. And so what we know is that there's been several senators have placed holds on the AV START Act, and I know that the committee and Senator Thune, they've been working very diligently on the legislation. But there have been some questions that were raised, and I think we need to push back on some of the misconceptions that are out there on the legislation. And our message is to the senators with these concerns. This legislation is not what you might say an end all or beginning of all, but it's really where we have to get started because it's a first step. Because when we look around the world right now, you have the Chinese and other countries out there that are developing the AV technology. And if we don't get started and make sure we get it done in this country, the United States is going to lose that innovation edge, and we're going to see it being developed somewhere else, someplace else where you might not want to be having it developed. And the other part of it is that when you think about the innovation, the jobs that could be created here in this country is very, very important. So we want to make sure that the autonomous vehicle legislation is created right here in the United States. And the other important thing is that what we're looking at is that you've had, our traffic deaths are going up in this country. We've had over 37,000 traffic accidents in the last year. We want to get that down. And we know that through this technology, it will help reduce it. And so first, I want to thank our chairman, Greg Walden, for the wonderful work that he did in helping to shepherd this legislation through and his leadership. I also want to thank my colleague, Chairman Harper, for his efforts, and Representative Kinzinger for his efforts, because again, we don't want to maintain the status quo. We want to be the leaders around the globe in this technology, but we need to have the Senate start moving ahead, because again, if you also look what's happened out there, you've got states that are moving ahead on their own legislation. We can't have 50 states in the District of Columbia out there with their own legislation out there. You don't want these cars being developed or people out there not knowing exactly what they should have in the technology, and cars shutting off when they get to state lines. So it's important that the Senate starts to act, and we really urge our Senate colleagues to move forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chairman of the full committee, Chairman Walden.
Thank you, Bob. So let's be clear here. It's time for the Senate to act. Unless you want innovation in this space to go to China and Singapore and Germany, you should act. If you want to save lives in America on the roads, you should act. We came together in a very bipartisan way, did the heavy lift in the House, 54-0 in the committee, voice vote on the House floor. Because we put American innovation first. We want these vehicles and this technology developed here, not somewhere else. We recognize the importance of a nationwide framework rather than a state-by-state patchwork that will not lead to innovation being done here. So whoever's got holds on this, take them off, work with us. I'm told trial lawyers, are in somebody's pocket somewhere. And it's gonna cost lives in America. And it's gonna cost jobs in America. And it's anti-innovation. And we're running out of time. Now, John Thune's done a great job, and we've worked with him, we've worked with others. They want to move a bill, but there are a few that are holding it up in the Senate, and they need to be called on the carpet for it, quite frankly, because this is really important for the country, and it's important to save human lives on highways. I know my wife's own car has a lot of this technology that's been developed, and many of you are driving cars now that have it. And you see how remarkable it is and where we can go. And for the mobility community, it's going to be really important. I know Mr. Harper will probably talk to that. But if we can save lives, generate jobs, develop innovation in America, why aren't we doing it? And if we can come together unanimously in this environment, as we did on this issue, then for heaven's sakes, the Senate can as well. So let's work together. Let's get this done. Senator Thune needs our help, and we're here to give it to him. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Harper.
Thank you, Chairman Walden, and I want to thank Bob Latta for his work as chairman of DCCP and what that has meant on the Self-Drive Act. And look, this is monumental. You know how difficult it is when you can have a piece of legislation that passes through a committee unanimously and also is unanimous on a floor vote by voice vote. You know you've got something special that's important. The Senate has an opportunity to join us in history with the very first legislation dealing with self-driving vehicles. This is very important. It's important to my family. Many of you know I have a son, Livingston, who's now 29, who has special needs. He has Fragile X syndrome. He's a great young man, but he can't drive. Think of what this means to the disability community to be able to go out and go where you want to go. And we're talking about the #1 impediment to employment for those with disabilities, it's transportation. This is a step we need to take. I encourage and urge the Senate, let's go ahead and make this, check the box on this, join us as a part of history. We're looking forward to the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we need to get the Senate to pass the Self-Drive Act. It's the right thing to do. It's life-saving technology. Innovation and advancements will change the status quo, and it's going to keep America leading the charge in this area, as was mentioned earlier in our competition. Cybersecurity is a critical component of this conversation around self-driving vehicles, and the Self-Drive Act addresses that. We champion the provision included in the bill that requires a company to develop and maintain a cybersecurity plan. I also helped to secure a provision that will set up an advisory committee to bring together experts to discuss how best to address cyber concerns in this space. Importantly, the Self-Drive Act also clarifies the traditional federal and state rules of the road. As was mentioned earlier, a car can't just shut down at a state line, for instance, when it leaves Illinois and enters into Indiana, so we need a federal framework to prevent that from happening. We're at a pivotal time in the development of this technology. America's auto industry has always led the world since the beginning of the automobile, and the technology grows more advanced. We need the actions by our Senate colleagues to continue to help us to facilitate leadership in that area. This technology is being developed well beyond Silicon Valley. It's happening across the U.S., in test tracks and research centers nationwide, and we can't let American innovation, American talent, and expertise go to waste. If the Senate doesn't move forward, Americans stand to miss out on this critical safety innovation. We've done our job in the House. We got it done in a strong bipartisan way, and let's just get this back across the finish line in the Senate. With that, I'll yield back to the chairman.
All right, questions? Yes, sir. You know, we just need them to move because then we can get to conference. I think we have a lot of issues in agreement with the Senate. Of course, I believe our bill's a perfect piece of legislation, but we just need to have something we can conference with or something we can move and work out. But every day that goes by, we're going to lose this competitive edge, and people will needlessly be harmed and die because we don't have this technology. And so they just need to act. And whatever mechanism they need to use to get to conference or to get a bill passed, do it. But we're likely out of here by the end of September, early October. And then you're into a lame duck and, time's running out. And we anyway. Well, actually, I'm a Republican. Well, I think what we're doing this moment is designed for that purpose, frankly, to turn the heat up on them. Now we're turning it up on ourselves today. But seriously, look, they're standing in the way. And that's my message, is whoever's got holds on it, take the holds off. Or come out in the sunlight. Join us out here. Let's talk about it. But right now, it's stall, delay. It's resist. That's what they're all about. They don't want to get it done, or they'd be working with us. We got it worked out in the House. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. How do you motivate them? I don't know. Turn up the public pressure. Every day it goes by, you're going to lose innovation and jobs in America. Everything that goes by, you're sending it to China. So I guess they have a China first policy. We dealt with all those issues in the House. Well, all right, pass something.
Maggie had her hand up first over here.
Right. Sure. Well, I think it's pretty clear. What you never see is what you didn't get, right? Because somebody said, "Well, I think I'll just go do that over here. I don't hold a news conference to announce I'm not doing something." But when you talk to the manufacturers and the innovators, they clearly say, "Look, this will make a big difference for us to do it here in the U.S." But if we've got to start complying with a patchwork of state laws in this space, you know, is that where we're going to make a long-term innovation investment? We certainly don't have this problem when it came to anything related to the internet, right? People just went out and had the opportunity to do it. Autos, well, that's a little different deal. And I believe we have strong safety provisions in here. I think we have strong safety advocates on both sides of the aisle in the House. I think we got to a good place. And basically, some of these same groups went to the Democrats in the House and said, "What about this?" They said, you know, take it up in the Senate. We got a good bill here. So they are, and they're roadblocking it, and they're holding it back, and it's trial lawyers.
She did have her hand up right there. You want to give her a quick?
Yeah. You know, I haven't, and John is a terrific leader, a great senator, and is doing really good work in this space. I'm going to leave it up to them how they get it done. We just want to encourage those who have problems. You know, let's try and address them. Let's try and work it out. But in terms of their internal mechanics, I wouldn't presume to be able to address that. Yeah. Well, it sure could be. I mean, Mr. Harper speaks about, you know, people,
Seniors or disabilities?
seniors.
Any group.
I mean, about
Any group.
my own father who, you know, gave up the keys to his car voluntarily, but, you know, not too many days after he accidentally backed into somebody in a grocery store part. No, I mean, a car, a little fender bender thing. And then he realized I should quit. Had he had self-driving technology, he could have stayed independent and mobile longer because, you know, cars are more capable today and they'll be far more capable in the future. So whether, you know, whoever you are, a senior, a veteran, somebody with disabilities, this is great promise for the future. But why wouldn't we want it here? Is this the one in where the woman was hit at night because the driver was watching a video? Okay, that's why I was asking. Yeah. Yeah, but most of those have been driver error, right? Human driver error, if I understand them correctly. And my understanding is, and you think about how many people died in traditional automobiles since then. How many people were injured in traditional automobiles since then? And they were rightfully putting this focus on this new technology. But my gosh, the life-saving capability of that technology will far exceed any mishaps. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.